this is kind of the pre 2.1 lesson. So before we can do this page and after we took notes and did this assignment right here, the assignment I noticed some people struggled on. So, and after talking to students, I realized a spot that I needed to explain a little bit better. So you are going to see these notes. These are in my notebook. So notice it says pre 2.1 lesson using an equation. So I want to explain why we use an equation in math. So what we had been doing, it says use the equation y equals 50x to find the rate. So we said that this 50 is the rate. So the rate would be 50. 50 is the rate. If you look back at the last lesson we did, this is actually, and it's on page M215, M2-15. This is actually TIMARS. So we looked at this for TIMAR, and we said that the equation, or we found that the rate was 50 over 1. So, and this is why we're doing this. So I'm going to explain it a little bit more. So this is, we're going to use this equation right here, y equals 50x, and we're going to fill in the following table. So equations help us figure information out or find information. So if we look, if I had been traveling, if TIMAR had been traveling for 0 minutes, what you're going to do is, this is the x value. So what I'm going to do first is find my black pen. So you're going to see me plug in to the equation. So I'm going to say 50 and then x. So we're going to use 0 as our x. So you're going to see me put parentheses. So I'm going to put 0. So if his rate is 50 and he's going 50 miles per hour for 0 hours, well, what is 50 times 0? Well, that's 0. So he traveled 0 miles. Now, if he does his rate of 50 for 1 hour, so he's going 50 miles per hour for 1 hour, how far would he have traveled? So it would be y equals 50. Instead of using x, we're going to use the time. So I'm going to use times 1. And you'll see me put parentheses. You could also put 50 times 1, because it's 50 as our rate for 1 hour. So 50 times 1 is 50. Then we're going to use 2 in our equation. So 50 times 2, or you could write it as 50 times 2. If I go 50 miles per hour for 2 hours, I would do 50 and 50 is 100. Or if you have a calculator on your phone, you could do 50 times 2 is 100. Okay, let's do the next one. 50 times 3, or you could write it as 50 times 3. 50 times 3, or 50 plus 50 is 100, plus 50 is 150. So 50 times 3 is 150. Now, some of you guys probably saw easily in that last set that we could just keep going 50, 50, 50, and you could just keep adding 50. But notice the next number was 4. Look at this one's next number, which is 10. So if we do the next one, which is 10, if I was going 50 miles per hour for 10 hours, or 50 times 10, so 50 times 10 is 500. So what you should have seen is each time this was going up by 50. That was the rate that we found in this equation, or the rate. So it was a rate of 50 over 1. That was our rate. For every 1 hour, he went 50 more miles. Now this next one is going to be a little bit harder. So let's do 500. Let's figure out how much it increased by. So I'm going to do 500 minus where I started. So 500 minus 150. So it actually went up 350 that time. And then 3 to 10, or 10 minus 3. 10 minus 3 is 7. Well, if you divide that like we did in the last set of notes, 350 divided by 7, 350 divided by 7 is still just 50. So 50 is still the rate. Even though there was a big jump, it would still be like that. So now let me explain. So I reminded you or showed you why we use the equation to get from time to distance. But let's look back at this graph. So if you were to look at this graph, and if you notice, it's 4 hours. Well, if I asked you how far did Timar travel in 10 hours, you couldn't extend this graph. You really could keep going by the same rate. So I could go 1 and 1 and 1 and 50. And I could keep going. Getting to 10 probably wouldn't be too bad. If you had to, you could. But if I said in 50 hours or 50 whatever, you definitely wouldn't want to continue this pattern. So we use the equation to make it a little simpler for ourselves. So like I said, if you had to do 50, 50 is a really long time to be driving, 50 hours. But if somebody wanted to figure it out, they could. So you could do 50 times 50, or 50 times 50 would give us 50 times 50, sorry, my phone is so dirty, my sons play with it all the time, 2,500 miles. So again, you could do that if you wanted, but you would not want to continue this pattern of going up by 1. So the equation is just using the rate that we found and multiplying it by whatever the hours or whatever is. So let's do the same thing. On page M214, how far did Dasa travel in 5 hours? So if we look at Dasa, this is Dasa. Again, if you really wanted to, all of these are increasing by 0.5. You could continue that pattern, or we can just say we're going to find 5. Her rate is down here, so 60x. So we're going to do 60 times 5. So if her rate is 60 miles for 1 hour, and we want to find it for 5 hours, what is 60 times 5? 60 times 5 is 300. So you would say Dasa traveled 300 miles in 5 hours. So the equation, again, just makes it simpler so you don't have to continue a table or a graph. You can just plug in a number, multiply it by whatever the rate was. So they were going 60 miles in 1 hour, so you would multiply 60 times 5 and you would get 300 miles. Let me know if you need help.